What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to Unit 7. This is our second to last unit, so we have one more after this. We are getting very close to the end, everybody. This unit is on nationalism, which, if you remember, means either pride in your country or the desire to have your own country, kind of a movement that started in the 1800s. And it's also about decolonization. It is like if you put DE in front of a word, it means to get rid of, or like defrost, for example, to get rid of frost. In this case, decolonization, we're talking about the end of colonization or the end of imperialism. So if you remember way back, and I think unit 5-ish or 4, we talked about imperialism and how Europeans went out and conquered places. So this is the end of that European imperialism. So before we get started, big shout out to Mr. Maslin's class out in Far Rockaway. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope that's a picture of him. I didn't just find some random other guy. Appreciate you guys watching. Hope the videos continue to help. Much appreciated. But we're doing 7.1. This is decolonization in India. Again, the end of imperialism in India. So I'm going to give you a little historical circumstance, and I'm going to keep using this word throughout the rest of these videos for the year because historical circumstances is on the CRQ. People are still struggling with them. So I want to make sure we're clear on it because historical circumstance is like the background or what led to it. So in this case, what is the historical circumstance of Indian independence or decolonization? Is this from 1750 to from the 1750-ish through 1900, the British government was increasing in its power in India, and they eventually overthrew the government in India, which was called the Mughal Empire. We talked about this. This is a review. We talked about the Mughals. We talked about Indian being conquered by the British, and when the British government overthrows them, they take control of the continent or the subcontinent, and they refer to India as the jewel of the crown. It is very profitable for them. There's a lot of resources there. There's tea, there's cotton, there's opium, which is going to be sold into China. There's a lot of valuable things there. And as like this cartoon here, you have the British guy like literally getting gold out of India. Fast forward a little bit. So they're in India for 50 years, and then World War I breaks out, and the British tell the Indian people, hey, help us fight in World War I. We will give you your independence when the war is over, and the war ends, and they don't get their independence. World War II comes around 20 years later. Hey, India, help fight, and we will give you your independence. And after World War II, they actually do. And there's really two leaders who are pushing for a lot of this independence between World War I and World War II. And there's two different groups that are pushing for it. And I mentioned this back when we did India and imperialism in India, but it's a little bit of a review here, but I want to remind you because these are two important groups. They're both nationalist groups. They want independence. They want freedom. They want their own country. And on the left is Mohandas Gandhi, who we'll talk a lot more about in class, but he is a member of what is called the Indian National Congress. It's mainly educated Indians who are in it. They're mainly Hindu. So in India, the majority are Hindu, but there's also a Muslim population. And the two sides historically have not gotten along. They don't really necessarily like each other. And Gandhi's group is the Indian National Congress. He did welcome Muslims into his group as well, but it's made up primarily of Hindus. And his tactic to protest the British rule is not like secret attacks and killing random people. He is into nonviolent protests. So there's a lot of different nonviolent protests that he is going to do to help stop this. One is called the homespun movement, and I'll show you more about this in class, where the Indians are asked to make their own clothing instead of buying clothing from the British. That is a protest. Another is called the Salt March. So instead of buying salt to prepare or to preserve your food, back in the day, they used to put salt all over stuff before refrigerators and freezers, and it would preserve it. This is why all your junk food has so much salt in it. They, instead of buying that salt from the British, they marched to the ocean and waited for the ocean water to evaporate and had salt from it as like salt water. So those type of protests are nonviolent. They are you're attempting in the best you can to protest in that way. That's the Indian National Congress. Another group forms in response to the Indian National Congress, which is made up also of educated Indians. These are mainly Muslim, though. It's called the All Muslim League. And their fear is that because if it becomes a democracy in India and all of India is together into one big country, the Hindus will rule over the Muslims because they will always elect Hindu rulers instead of Muslim rulers. And this group is scared of it. It's led by this guy, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and he is the leader of this movement. This is all going on in between World War I and World War II. World War II breaks out. It ends. The Allies win. The Indians helped in the process. And the British decide, the British agree through negotiations, through discussions with the Indian people, to grant India their independence. And their plan is this: to avoid conflict between these two groups of people, to avoid a war, to avoid what they see as could be an issue over who has power. The deal is agreed to split India in half, and they are going to split it in half between. So if you look at this right here, anything in green, this whole thing was India. Okay, anything in green was mainly Muslim. Anything in red or orange was majority Hindu. So the plan is this: we are going to make this region right here Pakistan, and this area right here, Pakistan. And that's going to be the Muslim part of India. Okay. And then the rest of India is going to be mainly Hindu. And if you're a Hindu living in Pakistan, you're welcome to move to the Hindu side, or you can stay where you are and just be a quote unquote minority in that area. If you're in India and you are in this region, the same type of issue occurs. You're welcome to go. If you're Muslim in Pakistan, come to India. If you're in India and Hindu, welcome to go. So people are going to move. This plan is called the partition. To part something, to part the Red Sea, for example, or to have a part in your hair is to split something in half. And in this case, they are going to partition India into this Hindu country, India, and a Muslim country, Pakistan. Eventually, this East Pakistan is like, we're not like these guys. We're totally different culturally, even though we're Muslim. We want our own country. And this becomes known as Bangladesh. So today, this is Bangladesh. This is Pakistan. What this does is it creates displacement of people. People are crossing borders. Displacement is to move or to be kicked out of where you are. And in this case, we have these new borders are created, and it's displacement of a lot of people. There's up to 10 to 12 million people who are displaced. 2 million people die. This plan does not work out very well, as people who are in Hindu areas who are Muslim are going to be killed, and Muslims who are in Hindu areas are going to be killed. It's like this crazy free-for-all where things don't shake out very well after independence. And this leads into today. These two countries do not like each other. I've mentioned in class and maybe in a video or two that there's a couple places in the world that are really hot spots of where if World War III happened, it would break out. This is one of those areas. These two countries are very tense and are kind of staring each other down, almost waiting for something to happen. And the issue is really over this region right here, which is controlled primarily by India, but it's a largely Muslim population. There's a lot of tension over who should control this region. Both sides today have nuclear weapons. They both have nuclear weapons pointed at each other. There's a whole bunch of their arsenal and estimate and stuff, 8 for Pakistan and in terms of cruise missiles, 14. So all these things are here in terms of just a visual of that both have nuclear weapons, both are pointing at each other, both don't like each other today. We will talk a lot more about Gandhi in class. He's a very central figure to all this stuff, but that's kind of the bare bones basics of it. If you have any questions, you let me know. Thanks again to Mr. Maslin's class for watching. You got any questions for me? Write it down. Let me know.